Hello everyone and welcome to this first series here in the channel. This is something that I've been wanting to do for the last couple of weeks, but we didn't have the chance until today. So today we're going to start with this series and it's going to be a complete pipeline. I'm going to be showing you how we can start building this chest inside of Maya. We're going to texture it, UV, rig it, animate it, and get it all the way to Unreal Engine and make it a functional prop inside of a game like a test, okay? So this is not, it is a beginner series because the asset is relatively simple to follow. I'm actually going to leave this image in our resources down here, so if you haven't seen them before, we have a Google Drive folder where you can look for the resources. The chest image is going to be there so that you can follow along as well. And even though I'm not going to be covering the basics of the interface inside of Maya, the tools are going to be very simple. So let's get started. This is Maya. I'm going to go file and we're going to first of all set our project, and we're going to set our project to our project that we're working on right now, which is a Leal 3D. There we go. And as you guys know, one of the most important things is keeping things organized. So one of the things that we need to do right now is we need to bring this chest into our source images right here. So this image is going to live inside of our source images. And now if we go to Maya and we go to, let's say, our front view, we're going to be able to go to view, image plane, import image, and we're going to import the treasure chest right here. The first thing we need to do, especially if this is going to be a game asset, is we need to decide what size this thing is going to be. I think 1 meter or 1.5 meters should be more than enough. So I'm going to create a cube, and on the scale on X, I'm going to say 150. That's 150 centimeters. And on the height of the chest, I think 1 meter should be more than enough. So I'm going to say 100 right here. As for the depth, that's a good question, right? How deep should this thing be? I think something like 100 centimeters should be a good amount as well. So that's going to be the size of my chest. I'm going to move this thing up into the ground so that we can see it. Press number 4, and we're going to scale this up until the chest measures roughly the same size. It doesn't have to be perfect, but as long as it's close, we should be good enough. So there we go. Now, you can see that when we're working with a real-world scale, the grid becomes very small. So, especially if you're going to be bringing this into Unreal, I recommend going to Display, Grid, and changing the units to 100, 10, and 1. That's going to give you something that's a little bit more useful here inside of Maya. So we don't need the cube anymore. What we need to do is we need to do a very brief blocking to understand how this chest is gonna work. So I'm gonna start with a very basic cube. Actually, let's bring the cube back. It might not be a bad idea. I'm just gonna grab this vertex right here, bring them down until they're right there where it closes, and let's scale them in right around there. Since this is a blocking, it might not be a bad idea to already add a couple of edges right here, for instance. And I'm gonna use the vertex of this newly created edges to give myself a little bit of this stylized look. There we go. So we do want to have this sort of stylized look for the chest, where it's a little bit curved on the sides. I think that looks very cool. And once we have this, now we need to have a very basic blocking for the actual chest itself, which is going to be the lid of the chest. So how can we do this? Well, of course, there's a lot of different ways, but to be honest, a cylinder is probably going to be the best one. So I'm going to create a cylinder right here, rotate this 90 degrees. There we go. And once this has been rotated, I'm going to make this a lot bigger. Delete half of the faces, which we're not going to need anymore. Push this vertex just a slightly bit up, or just the whole thing up. So I'm going to go to object mode, just push this thing up a little bit, and then scale this so that we match this thing right here. And you can see that there's also a little bit of a taper in the depth of the chest. Now here's a cool trick that you can use. Let's go to deform, and I'm going to use a lattice. The lattice will create a box around the element like this. And this lattice box is very useful because one of the things that we can do is we can just grab the top lattice points and push them, and it's going to give us a very uniform transition here on the sides of the chest itself. Once we have that, I'm going to delete history, and I'm going to push this out so that we get the proper depth of the element. So there we go. Let's push the image plane back so it's not bothering us. And this, my friends, is one of the most important parts, because at this point, it might sound very stupid, but at this point, we can actually send this to our riggers or to our animators, and they can already start working on things with this very basic blocking while we continue to model things. So this part of the process, the blocking process, is super important. Now, I can move the pivot point, for instance, on this thing back, and I can already see how this thing is going to animate once we open the lid, because the lid or the point right now is here on the back part of the chest. So, of course, one of the issues that we have with this chest right here is that we don't have any thickness. So we need to define the thickness. Let's start with the box right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this face. And then all of these other faces, I'm going to press Control E, and I'm going to do an extrusion towards the inside. Now, unfortunately, when we do this, one thing that might happen is that things on the inside are not going to look like great, and I don't like that. So instead of using this one, which is the local translate C, I'm going to use thickness, and this should give me, as you can see, a more uniform effect. So now on the inside of the chest, things are going to look a little bit better. I think that's a good thickness, maybe a little bit more actually. Let's go back to the T and just thickness a little bit more. There we go. That seems like a good amount. And you can see that edges right here are getting very close. That's fine because we're having a very like uniform thickness all around the element. We're gonna do the same thing on this lid right here. So I'm gonna say Control E, and we're gonna use thickness to push this in. And this is gonna give me a uniform distribution of the thickness, and it's gonna try to keep things very, very close together. That might be a little bit too much, so let's keep it like a hand. And there we go. Of course, the normals are inverted, so we grab both of the elements, and I'm going to say add mesh display and reverse. This one, you can also see that we lost the like flat area that we have right here. Let's just rotate this back to 0. So over here, we rotate, oh, actually not that one, this one, we rotate back to 0. And once we have this, it's going to be very easy to just grab all of these edges and flatten them out until we get this very nice effect right here. Perfect. So now on this side right here, one of the things that we need to do is probably do the same. So I'm going to flatten this, guys. Grab all the vertex points right here and push them down a little bit. So there's a little bit of, something right there for our elements. And there we go. We get the first like section of our element. This is a great point to save this thing. So I'm going to save this as chest underscore 001. I always like to do progressive saves when doing this to make sure that we don't lose anything. Now let's start doing some fixing, because even though we started with this as a base mesh, it's actually quite usable. Like we can start working on the actual model with these things that we have right here. The only things we need to fix the topology a little bit, because for instance on this like caps right here, the way that the wood is gonna like work, it's not gonna be ideal, right? So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go to all of these faces right here. Let's go to side view or right view. I'm gonna grab all of these faces, delete them. Oh, careful there, because we have the inside faces as well. In this particular case, actually, I think it might not be a bad idea to remove all of the inside faces as well. So all of this, and we'll recover the thickness as soon as we finish doing the actual planks. So we're gonna do a bridge. So we're gonna bridge from here to here, and then from here to here, from here to here, from here to here. And you can see that this plank right here is really, really small. So it really doesn't make sense to have another like little plank right there. So I'm just gonna add one line right there. Grab this vertex, and with a W or in V, I'm gonna snap it to the top and merge those points. I'm gonna grab this whole thing. I'm gonna say merge or mirror, and we're gonna mirror this on the world X negative and hit apply. Make sure that before we do that though, we're gonna freeze the transformations. Now we do, in this case, it's gonna be positive. There we go. So we have both sides right there. Now I'm going to do something a little bit weird. Some of you might be like, really, is this what we want to do? Because when you're learning 3D, they teach you very often that you need to keep everything watertight. And yes, watertight is usually a good thing to have. But in this particular case, if we want to have like the very nice planks of wood, it might be a better idea not to have everything be watertight. So I'm going to select all of this edge right here and all of this edge right here. And I'm going to go to edit mesh, and we're going to detach. That is going to separate this into multiple objects by doing mesh and separate. And there we go. Look at that. So now if we go, for instance, to this guy right here, I'm going to delete this center line, and I'm going to grab pretty much all of the edges again. I'm going to say edit mesh and detach again. So now each individual face, as you can see right here, is a separate element, it's a separate plank. And we can grab all of the planks, do another Control E, and extrude them in. Okay. Now, as you can see, when we extrude them in, there's going to be a little bit of overlap right there on the inside, especially. So we want to be careful about it. So instead of doing that, I'm going to go back, and before we split them, I'm going to remain right here. But what I want to do is I'm going to do a face. We're going to do Control E and keep faces together off. That way, as you can see, when we extrude, we're going to be able to extrude the planks a little bit better. Now, in this case, they're not extruding perfectly fine. You can still see the little bit of an error right there. One thing that we can do is we can push them out like this, and then we can offset out a little bit so they match. They're a little bit closer. I think this is good. Another option is we can push them in and then use negative offset to like taper them in. Both of those options are perfectly fine. So we're gonna go, I would say roughly around there, and we're gonna negative offset here to get them really close together. There we go. So what I want to make sure here is I want to make sure that these planks are not like welded together. It's very common sometimes that the tool will weld things together. So I'm going to mesh display and reverse. And as you can see, we get this very cool effect. And this is very low poly still. We only have 120 triangles. So this is perfectly fine. Now I'm going to hit bevel. And as you can see, this is going to bevel the whole thing, again, without combining the lines. We're going to do 2 segments and a small fraction just to give a little bit of a bevel right there. And this is going to give us a very nice like wooden effect while keeping everything at a quite low like subdivision level. Yes, we're now at 180 like points, but again, it's not the end of the world. So let's grab these faces right here. We're going to do the same thing. So I'm going to go to this edge, and this edge, and we're going to say edit mesh and detach. There we go. Let's go out. And one of the things that we need to do is we need to make them a little bit smaller. Like this whole face, I'm going to send to the pivot point. We do need to make it a little bit smaller because as you can see, it no longer matches with what we had before. So this is going to be like a cap that's going to live here inside of the wood chest, right? We're still going to have the like the metal borders that are going to help us like hide this a little bit more. But I would normally, or you would normally see this sort of like construction. So we're going to go right there. If we go to the faces, you can see that all of these faces are split, which is fine. On this ones right here, on the lower ones, I'm going to delete that middle edge. We don't really need it. And we're going to Control E the whole thing. We're going to push out and keep faces together off. Actually, this one's going to be a little bit tricky. I'm going to have to delete this line for just a second. I'm going to, again, Control E, keep faces together off. And we're going to push this in to generate the relative sort of like thickness that we have. Let's grab these 2 guys to get a similar effect. So right around there, I would say. That seems about right. Maybe a little bit more. Perfect. And now that we have this, we can, of course, mesh display reverse. And we're going to say bevel. Small fraction. 2 segments, a little bit bigger fraction so we can see a little bit of the effects. You can see we don't even need like the line right there because that pretty much like covers it very nicely. So we're going to grab this thing right here and we're going to mirror this to the other side. So you can see it's going to be over here. We can delete this one now. We're going to have this very nice effect right there. Let's do the exact same thing with the elements right here. If we go to the front view, one of the things that I'm going to do here is, again, I'm going to delete the inner side or the inner sections of these things. Here's a quick way to remove thickness from an object. Grab the object, grab the edge loop that gives it the thickness, and then delete all of the interfaces. There we go. Now, we're going to go front view. Let's go right here. And you can see that we have a very clear like position of the bands. So we're going to have one there, and another one right here. I do want to like push this silhouette just a tad bit more, just to, again, give it a little bit of a nicer effect. And the fact that not all of the planks are perfectly symmetrical, I find that to be like interesting, appealing. So I'm going to leave it like that. So we're going to grab this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, and of course the bottom parts, which we need to figure out in just a second. I'm going to say mesh display, and we are going to, or sorry, mesh tools. So yeah, mesh display and detach. Edit mesh, detach. There we go. So now if we do a mesh tools, mesh separate, we're going to be able to separate. We just need one of the front views, and we need one of the side views, and of course the bottom one. Those are the only planks that we need. So for this one, actually we can combine both of this because they're very similar. So I'm going to, of course, go to all of the side elements right here, and I'm going to go to edit mesh and detach again. So now all of the elements should be perfectly detached. Here's where we can make a decision. I'm not sure if I want this like chest to be like tapered on the side as well. It kind of makes sense, to be honest. So I'm going to go to the side view. I'm going to grab this guy right here. And I'm going to give it a little bit, not too much, just a little bit of a taper effect on the front as well, so that we get an interesting effect. Again, we're not seeing the side view on this thing, so I'm not perfectly sure. But I feel like with this sort of like stylized thing that we're going, it kind of like fits the style. So we're going to extrude, of course. We're going to keep faces together off. And we're going to push this in. And we might need to play a little bit with the offset so they remain really close together. Especially on this ones, you can see that the like the boards are really going out in a different direction. It's actually one of the interesting things. So I'm gonna try to find the point where most of the elements are nice, like this one right here. Most of them look nice. And if I need to manually like fix a couple of these things, for instance, this one right here, we're just gonna like flatten this to the ground, which is what we would expect. That one's also gonna be flattened, and we're gonna flatten both of them at the same like distance. All of this elements right here, we're definitely gonna have to make them a little bit smaller. Like that, perfect. And then on the inside, I'm probably just gonna grab a couple of these edges and just get them closer together. That's gonna help me like close the wood a little bit more. This one, we might need to push it in. It's such a small detail, but it's gonna really help. Grab both objects, mesh display and reverse. And of course, if we do a bevel with 2 segments and a small fraction, we're gonna be able to build this very, very cool, like a wooden general frame for the whole thing. This one I am gonna separate. So I'm gonna say mirror or a mesh separate. It's gonna be multiple elements. All of these guys we're gonna combine again, and all of these guys we're gonna combine again with G. And then this one we're gonna mirror to the other side, should be right there. And this one we're gonna mirror, in this case, not to the X, but to the C. And it's gonna be negative C. Hit apply. That's gonna give us the back of the chest right there. Now it makes sense to push this guys just a little bit in, because you can see the lid matches a lot or quite a bit in. You can see there's a lot of overlap right there. Actually, where's the lid? Oh, that's a little bit too big. Okay, let's go to the right view. I'm gonna grab, what happened to this guys? It's like I scaled or something. Did I like scale wrongly or something? Seems like I scaled it wrongly. There we go. So just move this up. Make sure this is as leveled as possible. There we go. And that should make for a very, very nice like compartment. So now we can grab all of these 2 things, combine them into a single object, grab these 2 things, combine them into a single object again. Remember, at any point we can just go back. And finally, we're just gonna be missing this guy right here. So I'm gonna grab my mesh tools, insert edge loop, and we're gonna insert, in this case, where's the tool? There we go. Let's say 5 divisions so that we get 6 planks. Let's scale this in a little bit more. Like this. Let's isolate it. Grab all of the edges, edit mesh, detach, Control E, keep faces together off. This one's a very simple extrusion. And then we just bevel everything, 2 segments and a small fraction. I'm gonna say mesh display and reverse. And now it's just a matter of making sure this fits as close as possible to the base of the chest. And there we go. We've successfully created this very cool looking chest with all of the planks being made like how they would be made on the real world. Here's a little bit of a problem. You can see right here, if I double tap one line, it's selecting multiple. I want to make sure that that's not happening anywhere else. Like, I don't really mind it too much on the top there, but that tells me that on this guy right here, something got unified. So I'm not gonna be able to, like, some sort of like vertex. There we go. So as you can see, that vertex right there got welded together. So let's go back a couple points before the bevel, and let's see what happened here. Okay, so right now each of those is an individual phase. That's great. Say mesh display reverse. And again, sometimes when we do a bevel, there's an option where it welds them together. See that? And I don't want that. So what I'm gonna do here instead is I'm just gonna like grab one of this, delete all of the other ones. And in this particular case, it's a lot easier since they're all flat to just like do this manually. Right, so I'm just gonna add a plank right there. Mesh display in reverse. Bevel this whole thing. 2 fragments or 2 sections, small fraction. 2 segments in a small fraction, sorry. Let's push this out. And then just Control D. And do something like this. Even if I need to make a couple of them like slightly like bigger or something, that's fine. Cool. So that will be like the initial. That's what I would do for the initial setup or the initial blocking of the whole thing. And I'm gonna go here to the right view. I'm gonna move with the letter D this point back here. I would expect the handles or the hinges to be on the inside, so I would say right around there. As you can see, when I rotate this around, I'm gonna be able to open this chest very nicely, and we're gonna see a very clean and very like, yeah, just a very nice effect. Sometimes these things are on the outside as well, so that when we do this, there's no like weird what's the word, sort of like overlap or anything. Let's save real quick and let's continue doing some more like very basic blockings. As you can see, this thing has a lot of details. We're going to be doing a lot of those like constructions later on the next video on the modeling part. But I do want to do some very basic blockings of this like bands, like this metal bands. So I'm going to go to my cylinder right here. Let's rotate this cylinder 90 degrees right there. And once we have this like this, I'm going to make it smaller, delete all of the faces on the lower side, and then all of this faces right here. And I'm going to use this to make sure that we can cover like the proper thickness and proportions of the, what's the word? Of this chest right here. So let's go to the top view. It seems to be good. There we go. Maybe a little bit flatter. A little bit more. Just to barely be touching the things. Right around there. For this one, I actually prefer going inside of the object a little bit. And then what I'm going to do, you can see that if we go to the front view, we got this band right around here. So I'm going to make it a little bit thinner. I'm going to extrude and extrude this up. And this is going to give us the thickness that we're looking for. Again, it's not perfect, so we might need to push things around a little bit. And the main problem here is that the sides of the cylinder are not going to perfectly match the sides of the wood. So we might need to correct some of this by pushing and pulling some of the elements. So for instance, this one right here. Let's scale them. It's a little bit of manual adjustment. Very, very important. Very common as well on the production pipeline. So we're gonna grab this one right here. Push this one right here. I want to have it like barely touching the board there. Again, this is just the blocking. Tomorrow or not tomorrow, the next video, I'm not sure if it's gonna be tomorrow or not, but in the next video, we're gonna be going a little bit more in depth with all of these tools right here. So yeah, that's it. That one looks good. So now I need to a little bit thicker right here. Now I need to grab this faces right here, like floating a little bit. So let's scale them in, and I'm gonna Control E and just push them down so that they perfectly like land on the actual point where this thing opens. And that face is key because that face is the exact same width that we need down here. So I'm gonna grab this one right here. I'm gonna say Edit Mesh, Duplicate, to duplicate that face. Push it down a little bit so that it's on the next part, which is gonna be right around there. And now that's a new object. So we can just grab the object, Control E, and bring it all the way to the bottom right here. Because you can see this thing goes all the way to the bottom part. The chest, as you can see, is kind of like rised up a little bit, which is fine. Which tells me that we might need to push the wood planks a little bit up, because this one's gonna stop right there. So all of this object right here, let's combine it. I'm just gonna scale it in a little bit. Shouldn't really modify much. There we go. There we go. Because that's the part that's gonna be floating. Now for this one, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go with my cut tool. I'm gonna add one line, let's say right there, another one right there, one more right there, and one more right there. And then if we grab this face, I can push this face out, grab this edge and push it in. Same for this one, push it in. Same for this one, push it in. Same for this one, push it in a little bit. And maybe this face, just push it out a little bit more. That's gonna give me a very nice like a blocking right there. Both of these guys we're gonna mirror on the X and negative axis. That should give me the two elements that we have on both sides right there. Now I'm gonna grab this one, Control D. Let's isolate this side view. I'm gonna delete it for now, and I'm gonna use this same like profile that we have to create this one right here. The only difference, as you guys already know, is the fact that I know we don't see it too much on the reference, but since we're doing this sort of like inclined effect, I would expect this guys to be inclined as well. So I'm gonna go to the vertex. There we go. Push this guys to the side, and then push this guys to the side. Push this guys to the side, and push this guys to the side. Finally, these ones are probably the trickiest one to select. This one's right here, push them to the side. But here's where like manually tweaking and adjusting a couple of things is a really good idea. Now you might be saying, hey Abraham, you're not selecting the ones on the back. I know. The reason is, at any point, it can just do a mirror on the Z negative axis, and it's gonna copy the exact same thing on both sides. So in this particular one, actually, I'm gonna center the pivot point, and I kind of feel like grabbing this whole board right here and just pushing it out a little bit more, so that it covers the union here on the side. So it's gonna be like a little shelf. Although another thing that I'm picturing here is that I'm gonna push this guys. I'm gonna grab this whole thing right here. Oh, why is it grabbing? We have it like a loop or something? Oh, that's really weird. Oh, for some reason it's grabbing the whole loop. That's fine. I'm just gonna grab this guys right here. Make sure we're not selecting anything else, just the front faces. And I kind of like this thing to be like a 90-degree angle. So I'm gonna push this out a little bit more to give me a little bit of thickness. I'm gonna insert an edge loop that goes right around there. And now we grab this guy, and we go from this face to this face, and we extrude. We can create a border that holds this corner as well. I think this looks even better. There we go. So now we got the corner on the side. We still see a little bit of the wood, which looks very nice. We're still gonna have some more reinforcement that we're gonna be adding, like this, like hooks right here on the side. And yeah, so now the only thing I need to do is grab this guy right here. Again, edit mesh and duplicate. Sorry, duplicate. And then with W, just grab that one, push it a little bit down. Control E. That one's gonna go all the way down, pretty much to the corner right here. Let's go to the front view. We're gonna add one there, one there, one there, and one there. Go to vertex mode. Start pushing these guys closer to their respective border, so that it holds both parts of the wood together to give us this very nice like effect. That on the side here, I would expect this thing to be a little bit like wider, so I'm gonna push this back so that it actually holds a little bit better the whole thing. That kind of tells me that we might want to do the same thing on this guys right here. Like, just like push this guys, like cover more of the chest itself. That looks good. Once we smooth this out, it's gonna look even better, so don't worry about that. And that's it. So this one, we're gonna do a mirror on the Z negative axis, so it goes to the back, and then we're gonna do a mirror on the X negative axis, so it goes to the other side. And same thing for this thing right here. And there we go. So this is the first part of this series, my friends. Again, this is the first series that we're going to be doing here in the channel. It's going to be multiple videos, and in this first part, we just like covered the main like construction of the blocking. We did a very quick blocking that could be perfectly functional, and we got most of the like basic shapes done here for our element. So on the next video, we're going to be focusing on modeling. We're going to be modeling like multiple parts of the thing right here, and we're gonna be adding a lot of the details, right? I'm not worrying too much about the amount of polygons. I know optimization, things like that for games can be very important, but I'm actually going like a little bit high poly on this one, and you're gonna get or understand why once we get into Unreal later on. So yeah, that's it for this one, my friends. If you watched the whole video, let me know in the comments. Make sure to subscribe if you're not subscribed, and congratulations, because something that you guys might not know is that a lot of people start their 3D journey, they watch video and they think that they can become artists, but then they don't do the work, they don't watch the tutorials, they don't do the exercises. Those people, well, I'm sorry to say, but they're probably not going to get very far. But if you are here watching this, then you have what it takes to become a great artist, and now it's up to you to do this exercise, follow along, and create amazing things for yourself. So that's it, my friends. Make sure to check our premium courses as well if you want to check more advanced techniques, and I'll be happy to see you here in the Discord and everywhere else. That's it for now. I'll see you back tomorrow.